Morning.
Good morning. Please be seated. Hey, it's a good day. We are happy to be here, smiling, looking great. Yeah. Yes. Thanks for the handshakes and smiles. We're happy to get going here with Unit 6, Reno High School. I'm Mark Towell. I taught We the People up in Reno for 12 years. And
John Height, Dean of the Board of School of Law.
I'm Bob Seal, former state treasurer.
Pat Skorkowski, Associate Superintendent for the Clark County School District.
you look ready. Ready. Binders are there. We're going to get to the questions. It shows question 3 today for Unit 6, Reno High School. It reads, for one thing is certain, the greatest threats to constitutional government spring from the lack of serious public discourse, and this from an uninformed public. Do you agree or disagree with the opinions expressed here, and why? What rules did the framers establish to ensure serious, fair discussion at the Philadelphia Convention, and are those rules still useful today? Lastly, what responsibility, if any, do schools have for teaching students how to engage in informed civil discourse? Why? Timer ready?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Mackie.
Thanks for helping. Please begin.
The lack of public discourse in our society today has led to the greatest threat to our constitutional government, an uninformed public. 3 bills, largely unknown by the general public, attest to this issue of an uninformed public, creating the potential for the devolution of rights.
The National Defense Authorization Act allows United States citizens to be detained indefinitely without their due process rights by circumventing the 14th Amendment. The Enemy Expatriation Act would allow the government to strip citizenship from Americans if deemed a threat or cooperating in any way with enemy combatants.
The Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA, recently suspended until late 2012, will cripple the freedom of internet speech and destroy various thriving internet corporations like YouTube, Wikipedia, and Google. Without public discourse and proper education, SOPA will result in a devolution of civil rights. January 18th was dedicated as a national day to protest SOPA. During this event, many prominent websites like Reddit, Wikipedia, and Google shut down some or all of their services, which resulted in an outrage and the benching of SOPA.
Proper public discourse protects the rights of American citizens by keeping the public informed of impending danger to civil rights and preventing America in 2012 from turning into an oligarchical dictatorship like that of George Orwell's 1984.
During the Philadelphia Convention, the framers established several rules for fair discussion. The rules, as well as their modern use, are as follows. Delegates from at least 7 states had to be present for the convention to do business each day. Today, this rule is set at half plus 1 for the House of Representatives and 1/5 for the Senate. Article 6, Section 2 through 4 of the Rules of Senate state, no senator shall absent himself from the service of the Senate without leave. This prevents members of the Senate from freeing themselves from the responsibility of difficult decisions.
When rising to speak, a delegate had to address the president. While a delegate was speaking, no other member could be inattentive. This rule ensures all voices who wish to speak will be heard and will not fall on deaf ears. A member was not allowed to speak more than twice in the same question. He could not speak the second time until every other member had had first an opportunity to speak on the subject. This rule is still current under Article 19, Section 2 of the Rules of Senate.
Committees could be appointed as necessary. Article 21, Section 1 of the Rules of Senate still hold this as viable today. Standing, select, joint, and conference committees are all necessary for maintaining maximum efficiency. The convention's proceedings were to remain secret. Article 21, Section 1 of the Rules of Senate allowed for a closed-door meeting. This rule is necessary to protect military secrets like the assassination of Osama bin Laden.
John Dewey, in his book entitled School and Society in 1899, stated, Democracy has to be born anew every generation, and education is its midwife. In Plyer v. Doe, education is a fundamental privilege under the 14th Amendment. Through this, schools assume the responsibility to grant students an education in government and the tools necessary to hold informed civil discourse. They have largely failed to do so.
Last month, our unit spoke to Colorado's Congressman David Skaggs on this failure. Skaggs lamented what he called the present unilateral civic disarmament of our students, rendering them ignorant and distrustful.
In order to revitalize the type of civic discourse seen at the convention, we need to teach civil discourse in our schools. Classes like We the People are model examples of how our schools teach students to be engaged in informed civil discourse. This education is essential to create well-rounded and active citizens in our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Move to questions now. Yes.
Okay, what do we do to increase the level of civil discourse in the media and in political life? I mean, we're reading about that now all the time in the newspaper. What do we do?
Well, unfortunately, this idea has been solved by many political candidates like Mitt Romney by using mudslinging and other ads to get attention to his campaigns and bring negative attention or negative light onto the other opponent and to get himself more involved and to spread a negative public discourse amongst our peers.
Mitt Romney, who just won Florida, read an article about how he won that state by just his negative ads, by just mudslinging. Now, this needs to be stopped, and we need to see more public discourse. And we, as the voters, need to stand up and we need to tell them what we need. We need to see this civil discourse and need to stop this mudslinging.
I agree with both my colleagues, but I believe that there is a time for negative attacks, and there is a time to bring out the negativities and the faults in your opponent. But it needs to be done in a civil manner. It needs to be done in a debate where the opposing party has a chance to stand up for themselves and recounter as to why this has been an occurrence in their past political life, or address the issue in a face-to-face civil manner.
And not only in a political setting, not only through candidates, but also through schools. I mean, spreading public discourse is really a challenge, but it's necessary and it's easily solvable by simply adding more debates or getting more involved in NGOs like the ACLU or the Elks Club, and really getting kids involved by just simply asking questions and seeing what their responses are.
Thank you.
Let's talk about social media, because you alluded to it in your presentation. What role should social media play, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, blogs, in civil discourse?
Well, social media is very important for an informed public. While it can be misinformation, that we believe is the school's job to educate students to be able to understand what is good information and what is such to be yellow journalism. So that the media plays the key role of keeping the public informed and spreading knowledge through newspapers, YouTube, Google, and those types of media outlets.
In our generation today, we see blogs as a very crucial and important way to spread and inform civil discourse, especially with young people like us.
Well, not only this, but especially with the internet and different websites like the Washington Post and NPR. You're able to go and see these stories about different candidates and different things like that, and you're able to learn about them. And with that, you can take that back to your family, to your NGOs, and talk about what you just read, and therefore it's increasing civil discourse.
How do we ensure a range of civil discourse in public deliberations around policy questions, for example?
This is also seen in movements like Occupy Wall Street, where individuals are getting together and talking about Citizens United and repealing that in favor of the McCain-Feingold Act. And getting down to policy questions is really by simply asking them. If only they need to be asked and addressed to an individual, if they're educated, which is the school's responsibility, they'll be able to answer back.
There needs to be a level of respect, and we see this in the need to address the president, not to be allowed to pass notes, and need to pay attention to the people speaking, so that not only do you listen to what they have to say, but you have a chance to formulate your own opinions before you have time to counter.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, what else do we need besides an educated citizenry and civil discourse? What else helps make a constitutional democracy work? What else is crucial?
Besides civil discourse, besides speaking, federalism, many of the topics that come in, really knowledge of the philosophy that our country is founded upon. Really, I believe to answer this question as strongly as possible, civil discourse along with federalism really is the best way to go. You allow local governments to speak to their people, you allow local governments to relay information to a higher power, the federal government, and you really allow the whole system to cooperate fully and allow each voice be heard.
The Bill of Rights, with the First Amendment, really protects our free speech to have informed civil discourse and to be able to communicate among our peers and our colleagues.
Yes, going along with that, like the Bill of Rights is one of the most important things that we have. We see that with the Tinker case. It allowed us to have freedom of nonverbal expression. And that's one of the ways that we're able, through these rights, to improve our civil discourse and to improve the government in general.
We talked about social media a minute ago. Emphasis was placed on the value of blogs and other informal journalistic outlets. How do you check, or how can we check inaccurate information or distorted information in that milieu? If it's a positive, how do we deal with the potential negative?
Unfortunately, due to the First Amendment, I don't believe that you can censor anyone's speech, whether it's true or not, but it needs to be the responsibility of the schools to educate students to understand what is good information, what's a good source, or what's a negative source. And we can see this through things like, I'm writing a term paper in anatomy, and I have to look through good sources on the internet and find out what's a good thing to cite and maybe what I shouldn't look towards for information.
Right, and this problem of negative ads really gets to the heart that under Citizens United versus FEC, super PACs are able to remain anonymous when putting pretty nasty stuff on the air. So if we were to go back, as I stated previously, to the McCain-Feingold Act, where it would be forced to let everybody know really who is putting on that air and know exactly who it is, it's easier to understand, well, is this really a candidate speaking about himself and speaking honestly about another, or is this simply a slander attack on how many girlfriends he's had?
It's not just blogs, it's also certain websites like Fox News and MSNBC who slant their media coverage towards one side of the political party, where you might, if you're on, say, Fox News, you might be only getting the Republican side of the story instead of maybe the full broad spectrum of it.
What does this look like when we talk about a threat that might become a problem and this is dangerous? And what can you paint a picture for us in terms of what we see now or what we might see down the road if this continues in some negative direction and is a real problem?
Well, we saw an issue last year with Gabrielle Giffords, with the taking your opinions and utilizing them violently. While we have laws against this, if things were to rise to that level and that type of hate were to be spread around, then we could have unrest and chaos in our society.
Also, when speaking to Congressman David Skaggs of Colorado, he also mentioned that our politicians today represent how America's generation is viewing themselves and really is what is promoting. And unfortunately, the idea that these negative ads and this negative speech and just violently attacks on one another really isn't getting to the heart of the issue. If political campaigns really turn into who can slander the other and who has more money behind it, we really see a devolution of politics. It's really important to maintain a limit on how much funding can be had so that politicians are really true to the idea of benefiting the people and not just their super PACs.
Not only this, but also I think with these negative ads that are going out into the media, I think eventually people are going to have to make a stand and say, we don't want to see these negative ads anymore. We want to see what is going on, and we want to see what the issues are. And so eventually, I think that people will be able to take a stand and make politicians not do these negative ads.
If we keep going down this road in an uninformed public, we could see more extreme movements like the Occupy Wall Street, where a lot of people in that movement have no idea what's really going on. They're just there to be there. They really don't know what the issues are. They really don't know what they're fighting for, and they're not really cohesive. And this could be seen more worse if we keep going down this road in an uninformed public.
With talking about the uninformed public, sometimes there's over-information. So how do we discriminate? How do we get our friends and peers and family members to discriminate?
That has to be on a personal basis. That has to be on that responsibility lies in the individual. If I feel that I need to become more educated in one topic or less in another, then that's the way it has to be. But holding classes like this, having debates like this, is really a way to hash out information, really get down to the bottom of facts. If I hold my views and you hold your views, and we never get to share. If we are allowed to come together in some education, some blog, then we are able to speak and then get to the facts and get to really the heart of the issue.
Often the over-information is just a lack of good information and people not being able to decipher which information they should be looking towards and not know that the Washington Post is a much better source than maybe their next door neighbor's blog for information. And they need to understand where they should look and what they should be looking for, and that not all information is good information.
We've had somewhere around 19 debates amongst the Republican Party recently. Have those debates added anything or detracted from the civil discourse that we've been talking about this morning?
Absolutely added, and one of the examples that I can think of from the top of my head where Michelle Bachmann attacked Gingrich for taking corporate bribes. That really brought light to the issue that really where are our politicians lying? Are they really being, through Citizens United versus FEC, taking donations? And it really put scrutinization on each political candidate and seeing where they voted and what they lied. That absolutely led to more discourse around Republican debates.
The Republican debates allow a type of discussion that allows the other side to counter. They allow for informed civil discourse to take place because they have a chance to say, no, that isn't exactly what happened, which we see with Romney when he's talked about his bonds that were not necessarily his, but that was his money that was being utilized, but it wasn't his choices that were being made, which Gingrich had made those attacks against him.
That's good. Wow, Unit 6 got Reno High off to a great start. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll share some follow comments, of course, but I share Judge Pro's view that he mentioned in the big room that we all are just really respect and appreciate you diving in like this and engaging and taking the risk to put yourself out here in front of everyone. You did a great job. I took notes after notes after notes, and I can't go through all that, of course, but you really flowed with each other. Your participation was very balanced. A lot of evidence, a lot of Supreme Court cases and stories from the news, and it came out very casually. It shows that you spent a lot of time getting comfortable with the language, and I also like that you met the congressman from Colorado and included that in your testimony and referred back to it. You have a passion for this topic and your unit, and I'm gonna pass it to someone else, but a lot of evidence. Good job.
Thank you.
The other thing that I really liked is the way that you engaged each of us as judges, taking time to make eye contact, which is really important in civil discourse, because if you are addressing the people that you are talking to, they are more likely to really listen to what you are having to say instead of constantly looking down or looking around or looking to your peers for that. So that's really important, that personal aspect in civil discourse is essential.
As a former politician, I appreciate the thought process that you go through in some of your comments, but I'm also perhaps one of the older folks here in the judging panel, and I appreciate your ability to project your voices in a way that I can understand without having to turn my hearing aids up.
I would agree with what my colleagues have added. I would say, as a small quibble, you clearly know your information very well, so you seem to be very committed to going back to your text and your primary presentation, and you probably could have done it just telling us what you had to say. So you seem more wed to it than was necessary, and if you can get away without having to keep going back to it, well, just tell us what you have to say. But that's a very small quibble and something to think about going forward.
Yeah, I'll add one thing going forward too. Thanks for reminding me that we should also offer some critical feedback because you were so good. There were just a couple times, almost every time it was flowing with evidence, even with McCain-Feingold, Occupy Wall Street, and Citizens United, boom, 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 3 inside of 15 seconds. That happened several times. But I wanted to say with regard to Occupy Wall Street, Helen, and you weren't the only one, there were two that I noted, but when you said that a lot of the people involved maybe didn't even know why they were there and were maybe ignorant to what the movement was really about, I think there's definitely some truth to that, but trying to add on the evidence, that's hard to measure and have evidence for, but that's just one little thing I would pick out. If anyone could have picked them up on that one and given an example of how we would know the degree of knowledge of the people protesting. But any other thoughts, right? Okay, well, congratulations, starting off really well.